In post-colonial studies and in critical theory, the term subaltern designates and identifies the colonial populations who are socially, politically, and geographically excluded from the hierarchy of power of an imperial colony and from the metropolitan homeland of an empire. Antonio Gramsci coined the term subaltern to identify the cultural hegemony that excludes and displaces specific people and social groups from the socio-economic institution of society, in order to deny their agency and voice in colonial politics. The term subaltern and subaltern studies entered the vocabulary of post-colonial studies through the works of Subaltern Studies group of historians who explored the colonial post-colonial actor role of common people who constitute the mass population rather than re-explore the political actor roles of the social and economic elites in the history of India. The subaltern perspective stands for understanding the society through conditions of subordination of people belonging to the different caste, class, age, gender, race, etc. It seeks to present an alternate image of society through the viewpoint of the masses, usually unrepresented. It seeks to restore a balance by highlighting the role of the masses as against the elites in political and social movements. It treats peasants, tribal, and other marginalized sections of the society as the makers of their own history. The Gramscian term subaltern means subordinate group. As a method of investigation and analysis of the political group of subaltern populations, Karl Marx's theory of history represents colonial history from the perspective of proletariat, that the who and the what of social class are determined by the economic relations among the social classes of a society. Since the 1970s, the term subaltern denoted the colonized peoples of the Indian subcontinent. Imperial history told from below, from the perspective of the colonized peoples rather than from the perspective of the colonizers from Western Europe. By the 1980s, the subaltern studies method of historical inquiry was applied to South Asian historiography as a method of intellectual discourse. The concept of the subaltern originated as a Eurocentric method of historical inquiry for the study of non-Western peoples of Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, and their relation to Western Europe as the center of world history. Subaltern studies became the model for historical research of the subaltern's experience of colonialism in the Indian subcontinent. Post-colonial theory studies the power and the continued dominance of Western ways of intellectual inquiry, the methods of generating knowledge. In the book Orientalism, Edward Said conceptually addresses the oppressed subaltern native to explain how the Eurocentric perspective of Orientalism produced the ideological foundations and justifications for the colonial domination of the other. Before their actual explorations of the Orient, Europeans had invented imaginary geographies of the Orient, predefined images of the savage peoples and exotic places that lay beyond the horizon of the Western world. The mythologies of Orientalism were reinforced by travelers who returned from Asia to Europe with reports of monsters and savage birds, which are based upon the conceptual difference and strangeness of the Orient. Such cultural discourses about the Oriental other were perpetuated through the mass communications media of the time and created an us and them binary social relation with which the Europeans defined themselves by defining the differences between the Orient and the Occident. As a foundation of colonialism, the us and them binary social relation misrepresented the Oriented as backward and irrational lands, and therefore in need of the European civilizing mission to help them become modern in the Western sense. Hence, the Eurocentric discourse of Orientalism excludes the voices of the subaltern natives, the Orientals themselves. The cultural theorist Stuart Hall said that the power of cultural discourse created and reinforced Western dominance of the non-Western world, that the European discourses describing the differences between the West and the East applied European cultural categories, languages, and ideas to represent the non-European other. The knowledge produced by such discourses became social praxis, which then became reality by producing a discourse of difference. Europe maintained Western dominance over the non-European other, using a binary social relation that created and established the subaltern native, realized by excluding the other from the production of discourse between the East and the West. The historian Fernando Coronel said that its goal as an investigator must be to listen to the subaltern subjects and to interpret what I hear and to engage them and interact with their voices. We cannot ascend to a position of dominance over the voice, subjugating its words to the meanings we desire to attribute to them. This is simply another form of discrimination. The power to narrate somebody's story is a heavy task, and we must be cautious and aware of the complications involved. Like Spivak, Bell Hooks questions the academic's engagement with the non-Western other, that in order to truly communicate with the subaltern native, the academic world would have to remove him or herself, the expert, at the center of the us and them binary social relation. Traditionally, the academic wants to learn the subaltern native's experiences of colonialism, but does not want to know the subaltern's own explanation of his or her experiences of colonial domination. In light of the mechanics of Western knowledge, Cook said that a true explanation can come only from the expertise of the Western academic. Thus, the subaltern native surrenders knowledge of colonialism to the investigating academic about the binary relationship of investigation between the academic and the subaltern native. As a means of constructing a great history of society, the story of the subaltern native is a revealing examination of the experience of colonialism from the perspective of the subaltern man and the subaltern woman, the most powerless people living within the socio-economic confines of imperialism. Therefore, the academic investigator of post-colonialism must not assume cultural superiority when studying the voices of the subaltern natives.